Just want to say welcome and thanks for having me in your home here, Mu-raay. And we've been sitting here for a couple of hours now, and getting to know each other and talking. And it's a pleasure to be able to share this time with you and learn a bit more about your culture and your history and teaching. So I think I'd like to offer a moment for you to introduce yourself to everyone out there, maybe a bit about yourself and your life and everything like that.
Thanks, brother. Yep, so we're sitting here on Gubbi Gubbi country, Kabi Kabi land. Been living in this area for about 24 years, 25 years now. Raised my kids here, and my name's Mu-raay Djeripi, Ngamaringama, Gamilaroi man. Family originated from the area around Thalon, and so my family originated from that area, going back to my great-great-great-grandparents. Taken off country, my great-grandmother sent up to Barkhalden when she was young. She was given away as a domestic and taken away at the age of 10. She grew up there, met my Irish great-grandfather, and married in 1895 and raised 9 kids up there, and then the kids all eventually came down to Brisbane, and my dad was then born down here, and pretty much spent my life in the desire to learn as much as I could. And at the ages of about 22, 23, after joining the police force when I was 20, and then left that, and then went overseas, travelled for a year, and then came back, and always wanted to be involved in the culture in a bigger way, but it wasn't a really heavily remembered aspect of our culture with all the things that had gone on. So I desperately wanted to be involved. And I can remember thinking probably the best way to be involved and learn as quickly as I could, while being always kind of a bit more spiritually aware. The dance and the song and the story aspect of it was, for me, a little bit more lacking because of that breakage. So at the age of I studied stuff and read stuff and had a little bit of stuff that I could do work with since I was about 15, when I was heavily getting into it. And then at the age of about 22, after coming back from overseas, I decided that, somebody offered me a chance to do some artwork, which I couldn't do, and I wasn't an artist and I wasn't a speaker of any type. And but my old people that I speak to, Spirit-wise, said that if you pick up a paintbrush, you'll learn a lot more than just how to paint. And that was the reason I started the business. I thought if I did it every day of my life, and I could justify it by turning it into a business so that it sustained itself, so that I could do it rather than just do it on weekends. I could do it every day of my life, all the time. And that's what I've done for the last 30 and a half years. It's all I've done 7 days a week. Is if I'm not talking about it or painting it, or I'm speaking spirit way, or spending time with elders. And I used to do artwork so that I could give some back to the elders, and they could run men's, women's groups, and then they would just pass back some knowledge to me. And it's just been a cumulative growth. I basically wanted to save my culture, but it also gave me a whole life doing it.
And on that culture, the Gamilaroi culture, I mean, I know we're on a podcast, and you joked before that, it's not something that can be talked about in an hour or so. It's like any ancestral culture, it needs days, if not years, of lifetimes to talk about. But I was wondering if you could share a bit about the knowledge of your people, like where do you come from? Like a bit for the audience maybe to grasp, where you're from.
Okay, so it's easiest to start off with geographically where it is. So just on the other side of Gundawindi, Boggabilla, there's a big place there, Boob Lagoon, and that's the far north-eastern aspect of our country, and the point at which we believe our country began from. won't bother going into too much detail of that. I'll just kind of skip along, but that's a hugely sacred site for our people. It goes across to the St. George area, which is kind of the corner country of about 4 or 5 nations. Then it goes down eastern side of Lightning Ridge, all the way down to about an hour and a half northeast of Dubbo, approximately. And then it cuts across to probably in about an hour and a half northeast of Newcastle, and then the whole western side of the Great Dividing Range. So it takes in the countries of Tamworth, Narrabri, Mu-raay, and then all the way up to where my people came from, which is between the Boggabilla country and St. George, the northern border. We're up in Thalon, Mungindi, so we're on the border country with the Gamilaroi people who speak, and our people are very similar, about 90% language. So yeah, so that's the geographical.
It's quite a vast area when you think about it. For people that are listening out there, we're talking about in what we would say in the colonised version of New South Wales and Queensland of Australia. But we're talking about quite a large piece of land.
Yeah. So the only bigger country than ours, like desert countries tend to be a little bigger, but understandably, if you're in a desert, you need a larger area to compensate in food-wise and territory, so you've got less people. These are big populations on country. The Wiradjuri people were below us. They had that area just north of Dubbo, and they went out to the back of the Blue Mountains, and they went out further west than our country, and also over the Victorian border. So they were about just approximate from what I see on maps, about a third, maybe even a 25% bigger than our country again. So you could walk from probably more than an hour over the Victorian border. You stepped on there, and you could walk all the way through over the Queensland border by just only passing through two nations. So they were the two biggest, people. What else would I say about it? So in regards to what we're saying there about something else about our culture and stuff like that.
Yeah, just something about like maybe something like the meaning. What is the meaning of Gamilaroi?
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to go to that actually. Yeah, so the word, most people don't realise the words for most of our, and it'd be 95% of our languages, if not higher, the word Gamil means the word no. And people don't realise that all of our languages or the names that we've been given mean no. So from what I understand, I know that majority of the nations, if you say Gubbi Gubbi or Waka Waka or whatever it is, from what I understand, my little disclaimer for the ones that I might get wrong, but as far as I know, 90 to 95%, I think there's only, I've heard of maybe one or two that use the word yes, but it's across the board. And I think I've heard that even internationally with some of the nations. But so the word no, and so Gamilaroi means those who say no. Now, I haven't had it overly explained to me, but from what I understand, that word no is, people might think, oh, that's very negative, but I think the people around your country, when like acknowledgement to country, welcome to country, there's a border. We weren't walking from Northern Territory to Alice Springs and then down to Tasmania, just wandering, looking for food. That's that kind of colonised concept of wanderers and stuff, and it's very easily to write off of people by just looking like we're scantily walking around doing whatever. People had their country. You were doing initiations, and my explanation would be very similar if I was looking for an analogy, not saying this is it, but looking for a translation for something that much younger, that if people would understand it, would be that think of acupuncture. So I might be the people that have the country between the elbow and the wrist. My job is to look after the country between the elbow and the wrist. My job is to look after it, make sure it's healthy, both physically, by burning things off, by doing our songs and ceremonies. It actually induces the energy to flow through. So just like you'd put a needle in an area, we didn't have song. We had song lines. So that was maybe, again, an analogy would be that energy flowing through that region. I'm using a lesser explanation to talk about something that's much deeper. And again, this is my translation of it. And in turn, you'd have Bora sites and ceremonial sites, and they weren't random. They would have been heavy energy points whereby, like an acupuncture point, goes into the ground, and those songs and dances were vibrations. They were there for a reason. They weren't ooga booga dancers. They weren't just somebody having a rave party. This was people that were fully conscious of the vibration in their voices, and the movements they made would actually energise and refertilise, literally helping unclog and keep the flow of energy going. Because I knew my brother, maybe Wiradjuri, worked from the shoulder to the elbow. I worked from the elbow to the wrist. Bunjalung worked from the wrist to the fingers. My responsibility is to do the best I can, not only with the time I've been given, but our people were meant to look after that. We weren't meant to lean over the fence and tell our other brothers, hey, make sure you're looking after that bicep properly. Keep your eyes straight ahead. I trust my brother and my sisters are doing their job. I will look after my job. They won't be looking over the fence telling me what to do. So it's trust, and it's being in full awareness of looking after what I need to do, you know. So talking with things like that. So Gamil means no. Why I come back to that means that I imagine my brothers and sisters looking from the outside in. It's a simple English version to just say no, but the word would mean at this point I go no further. I wouldn't cross that border because my Gamil means no. They who say no. It's a simple way of saying no more, no further. And what would mean was that I wouldn't cross that country until I stood there and waited. And my belief is that our people, especially the sharp, Wirrawins, our clever people, they would know when people were on our borders. And if you hadn't sent ahead with runners that were able to cross over and move through country because they were marked up with certain feathers, paintings that would allow them to be the delegates that could cross country, and they could move through country without ever being hindered because they were your runners through there. So just like the Aztecs had those, so the Incas had those people that would run all over the country and pass messages. No one was to, So the same with them fellas. We had these things going all the way through. So again, you always have to use lesser terms to explain something deeper. If I said Pony Express, people go, oh, now I know what you mean. Yeah, well, that, but not horses and passing on feeble messages. So these things would pass stories and tell at gatherings and asking permissions and stuff like that. So that would all be, it was very organised. Things were done well, and that's what happens with a 200,000-year-old culture. It wasn't sticks and stones and whatever. So these people would be crossing over, and if you hadn't done that, you might have to wait on the border of a country maybe for somebody to come. You wouldn't step onto country until somebody had invited you on, because otherwise you could, they who say no, you don't move until that permission's given. So Gamil no means that you understand that from this point on, they would say no to that, because that's a simple understanding of that's a border, and most borders were geographically designed around mountains, hills, creeks, rivers, and so there was an obvious border that you knew where your line was. So simple explanation for the word Gamil or Gamilaroi, they who say no.
Thanks for that. It's beautiful to hear how there's a sense of consciousness within Indigenous groups without having to cross a border. They know that they're protecting people maybe downriver, and do you feel like ancestrally that was done through trade or through protection of waterways or burning off or things like that, that although you wouldn't cross country, you were still protecting the country that was not yours?
The part that, like I said, from the elbow down to the thing, to your wrist, you knew you were part of something bigger. You know that song line went from multiple nations away, but the whole concept, as I said to you before, when looking into not lesser, but a lot earlier, not earlier, a younger system of belief like Christianity would say the old Jesus line of don't be looking for the splinter in your brother's eye, look for the log in your own.
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to know that I'm much better if I'm running in my lane, doing exactly what I should, because that occupies 100% of my focus on me, and that's what Earth Mother, Gunima, would expect of her child. Not to have the children fighting, but have the children being responsible and doing the best they can do. maintain her in the way she needs to be maintained so that she looks after us. So there's a wider scope of understanding that you're a part of a bigger thing. And where we've got the world now, where left hand's slapping the right face and, the left leg's kicking up the right cheek's ass and stuff like that. It's all fighting against each other, and the stupidity of that. I mean, you couldn't think of a more primitive concept of when you've lost the idea of how that you are one in not just a physical sense, but ethically, morally, and spiritually. And these people were aware of those things. My understanding is that people say, "Oh, did you people meditate?" Stuff, and I don't know. I wasn't there 250 years ago, but my understanding was from elders that I've spoken to that people, where you see the monks meditating and things like that from a culture that might be 20 or 30,000 years old, maybe. You're looking at the people that may have gone past that in 200,000 years, where when you walked, you were, in a sense, you're in a consciousness of meditation. When you hunted, you're in a consciousness of meditation. When you were burning the land, when you were performing those rituals, it was in a constant state. It's like you'd hit a point where you didn't go to church on Sundays and then not go to church the other days. You were in a constant state of the same way. So somehow they walked where they were in a kind of a meditative state, maybe while still joking and laughing, and still in a meditative state. You're hunting, still meditative state while you're ceremonial dancing. That's what 200,000 years gets you. You get to a place where humanity hadn't been before.
It's almost like like a moving meditation or a complete connection to the vibration or the country that you're on, like a oneness with the elements.
Yeah. So you've reached an evolutionary point where you're not coming in and out of it. You just stay in that state. That's proper evolution. Yeah.
How does that cross over for you? You're an artist yourself. How does that cross over that use of like meditation in artwork or bringing your culture into like art? How would you say that from that point of view?
Well, being an artist, and I wasn't, but never interested in art originally. But what I'd say is that the way I perceived art was that I just wanted to be involved, and the way I think of it is spirit shows itself. It solidifies itself in our thoughts and then solidifies itself further into the physical things that we see. So the actual physical is just a solidified version of light. So that would make sense with, quantum physics that say that things just get denser and denser. So I would just say that while the physical body that we have now, they say like over 95% of it's empty space. So the 5% of it that isn't empty space is just vibrating thing that moves from one side to the other, which looks like we're more solidified. But our physical body is denser than our thought, and our thoughts are denser than our essence. And so essence became thought, became physical reality. With my artworks and things all going into the cultural side of things, which is where the art comes from, is that our song, our dance, the way we hunted, everything we did that we would perceive as culture is just spirit being burst into the world. It's taking a form. So it's the essence vibrating into movement, which became dance and whatever. Our painting is a visualized and more solidified version of the story. And the story becomes the dance, the story becomes the artwork, the story becomes a song, or the song becomes the story. So all of these things that we perceive as, this is our culture, it's just a variant version of how spirit can show itself through the Australian Indigenous, and those slightly varied versions show themselves. So there's infinite ways of spirit showing itself and infinite forms it can take. So when I did my art, it wasn't about trying to be a flippin' pretty artist or anything like that. I painted pretty crappy when I started, and I jokingly but truthfully think that the only reason people bought my stuff originally is because it looked, I would say it, people think, it looks pretty crappy, that's traditional, that's the real thing there, and it just comes from the kind of racist kind of concepts of, and anyhow now my art's super fine, but I think only people bought it because they thought the rougher it looked, the more original it was.
They felt sorry for you.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I don't even know if they felt to feel sorry for me. I think they just thought, yeah. But I was wrapped And but never was I ever painting to become an artist of any kind of note. I still don't care about it. To be honest, it's probably sacrilegious against the world, but I really don't have that much love for art or anything. It is what it's supposed to be. It's a projection of spirit. So we don't sit there and worship, or we shouldn't worship the TV screen going, oh, look at this, or the old film projectors. We didn't sit there and pat at the pictures of our mum and dad on the old videos going, oh, look, I'm touching the real thing. We know it's just a projection. And our culture, and as far as I'm concerned, what I put up in their galleries, whether I've sold it all around the world in the last 30 years or whatever, I'd rather somebody say, I love the story you told, or I love the way you told that story. That would be a bigger personal impact for me than somebody going, I love how pretty your art is or how fine it is, even if, and I do paint very fine, but in that fineness, I'd rather people know the story of the fineness, which is this guy must be really proud of what he does because he seems to take so much effort in making everything. And that is what it is. My story changes the way I paint. Just like any story changes the way you act. If you have a deep belief, the deep belief changes the way you think. The way you think changes the words that come out of your mouth and the actions that come out of your hand. So if you start with a shitty story, there's not much chance you're going to come out with anything other than something that's superficially pretty, but it doesn't mean anything. So with my art, I just think they're palm cards for telling stories. And I've only just said to somebody recently, I said, like, you know, when we were painting, people were painting on cave walls, we weren't sitting there and say, see that fine line work I have there? I think that accentuates, I think the nice floral nature of this Chardonnay goes well with the fine line work that I was trying to express there. It was never about that. He was telling you what was here and what it stood for and the ethics, morals and values behind that being and what aspect of the country we stand. And it was all about everything other than the art. The art's literally just a projection of a story, and the story's a projection of the original essence from which it all came. So I paint with those things. I like painting, and when it comes to the physical act of it, to me, I think I get pleasure in the fact that I can sit down and still be having thoughts about elders who told me about this, or those elders that told me that, or gave me permission to do this. And I know I can just, and I enjoy it, but it's the end product of something. And if, I think when I was in New Zealand working with Māori artists and stuff over there, they asked me to get up and do a speak on spirituality and culture and stuff. And when I did that, I said, and we had First Nations American mob over there, we had Inuit, we had some South Pacific and obviously Māori running it, and 5 Indigenous over there. And when I did this in the Mu-raay, when I did a talk there, they asked if I could speak on that. And I said, I think our job as artists from all around the world is to re-envisage and let be seen what was once able to be seen by all peoples. And our special job as artists is to put an image that people have forgotten how to see spirit in things. And we all had cultures, whether we were Germanic or Celtic or African or Asian, North American, didn't matter where, South American, it didn't matter where we came from. Once upon a time, all our cultures had 10, 15, 20,000 years of knowing this. I'm proud that I come from a people that are 200,000 plus years, and people go, oh, no, it's 15. And I think it's funny that science, I mean, it's okay that science does this because they supposedly don't claim themselves to know all. They say we're in the process of knowing. Mm-hmm. So what they used to say is 5,000, then they went to 15, then they went 20, and I said, when I'm teaching, I go, and then he went 25. Anybody got 25, 30, 35, 40, 40, 45, 45, 50? We got 60. We got 60,000 years. And it's good to have a little joke at that because it takes away the seriousness of the fact that the very people that tell us how long we've been here weren't here when we were here. Mm. And their evidence is as good as the evidence they find. And their limitations are the fact that they can't know what they don't know. When our old people said we were always here, most people mock that and think that, oh, that's just what they think. Yeah, we've been around longer than they were. Little brothers shouldn't tell big brothers what to think. Mm-hmm. A little bit of humility goes a long way. And I think that they've found sites of 189,000 in Queensland, 120,000 in Victoria. And and the fella that found both those sites, along with Lake Mungo, who he claimed he wrote as 40 because he said, I knew no one would believe me in the scientific world, because when they write books in the scientific world, they hate to have to screw the books up and send it out again. So they tend to pull people down for that. So he put 40, but he said, I knew it was 60. And then he said, I found 120,000 site in Victoria and 189,000 in Queensland. He said, and there's sites older than that. But he said, that won't come out till after I'm gone. So
You were talking before, sorry?
About the art type of things, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking before about, maybe if you could talk a little more for people that are listening about the understanding of like the physical and when you have the spiritual together through like artwork, or it gives kind of a, like the roadmap, or it gives people like where they can kind of put a marker on a map to say I'm from there. You know, I don't know if artwork or art has or plays a part in that, or the storylines or song lines or anything like that.
So you're talking about different artworks from different areas?
Yeah. I mean, we were talking before, you were saying how when you see that artwork, you know that you're from that that country, or that when there's a story that's told in, you know, like Dreamtime, or it can be like a song line, you can feel something, and it builds that bridge between the spirit world and the physical world. You know?
Yeah. Okay, so two different things there. So one would be in regards to, I'll just kind of go with what I was thinking you meant at first. Geographically, one thing just for the sake of everybody knowing that the country wasn't one people. You know, there was people from what they call pygmies, you know, in Africa, but there was people in Africa, but there was people even around here, as well as up in the there's people up in around this country, as well as people up in the Daintree that were small people, 3.5 foot tall, and that for men, maybe up to 4 foot. And then you'd have people from Kalkadoon, big, strong, 6'4" men or whatever. And then you'd have heard there was people over in Western Australia on an island that was 7 foot tall. And one of the things just while I'm talking about different shapes and sizes of people who had different looks and different shapes and stuff like that, you know, people think that, you know, over in New Zealand and giant Maori fellas, yeah, well, Maori and Tongans wouldn't have survived in the inland Australia. So our bodies are shaped based on the land that you live. And but the word, even the name, I'll just chuck this one in the name, when Captain Cook's, I've been told this on multiple occasions, and as far as I know this to be true, so open to conjecture if there's anybody thinks otherwise, but they said that some of the names that were given away by Captain Cook just denoted exactly what we're saying there. On his journeys up, he didn't go into the Sydney Heads, but as he passed Sydney Heads, he looked through his telescope and looked up and saw warriors standing on the northern heads. And as he sailed by, he noted in his journal that on this day, on the northern cliffs, I saw the most manly of Indians that I have seen on my journeys. And he'd just been to Tahiti and he'd been to New Zealand. So this guy's looking up at the telescope and he said, I have seen the most manly of warriors. So on this day, I named this place Manly. And so that's how northern Sydney gets its name. Yeah.
Well, yeah, for people out there maybe in other parts of the world, that's a suburb of Sydney.
Yeah, exactly.
Manly, Sydney, Australia.
Exactly. So these kind of things, you know, it just denotes the amount of differences between us in regards to art styles and stuff like that. You know, people were built differently, they ate differently. You don't see people painting dolphins in the desert. You don't see people doing certain building constructions where they use palm fronds and stuff if they're in the desert, or, you know, so you're not doing, desert people don't tend to do a lot of cave paintings. So it's, when we talk about the land shapes you, what you eat, the shape of your body, the stories you know, the learnings you get, all come from the very land that you live under, the heat that you live under, the water supply you've got, the size of the animals you have to hunt, the size of your body, how intrusive, you know, if you're overly heavily populated, then you might be more warlike because you need to defend more. So, and I mean, our people took care of all those situations so that those things didn't have to happen either. But So that's that. So the artworks change too because, again, you're painting different things from different places. In regards to I was just going to say a little bit about my artwork is I do a mixture of traditional works that were given to me, Uncle Paulie Spirum, who's been a very really strong elder in respects to gathering the off-country people, so one's not living on the space. He's gone along and vacuumed us all up and brought us back under the umbrella, and he's helped with other elders in bringing back initiations and ceremonies, and not so much initiations because those things, when they stopped, his father was kind of older when he was born, so his father was actually one of those clever men, and so he'd been through ceremonies and stuff, and he was the last of those ones, secret initiations in the 1920s and like 1890s and things, and so he comes from that lineage line, and he's done a huge amount of work with his sons and his family and general daughters and his sister in regards to keeping that very glimmering light still aloft. So we really greatly appreciate that. I've had awesome other elders that have helped me along the way. But so the styles of work that I've tried to create historical paintings. So paintings about the things the way they were. They may not be done in a traditional form, but it actually denotes, maybe hunting scenes or ceremonial dancing scenes or, just the way life was. Other paintings, so I do historical, I do a traditional, I do a mixture of my Irish and my Aboriginal, which I called Indigenous knotting. So it's using the knotting of the Celts, which again, when I keep coming back to, we come from the same light, but we come from spectrums of the same light. So I can be green and you can be blue. You're supposed to run your race. Don't lean over and tell the green guy how to do it. I don't tell blue guy. I don't want to conquer blue guy. If I conquer blue guy, when we all decide that the white light became the rainbow, the white light became the rainbow. The white light is the rainbow. Creator created. Next line, creator is the creation. So the spectrums of light that we're looking at, it's not for me to wipe out the Hindus or the Christians so that there's more room for me. It's no use me wiping out women or women wiping out men. We're all spectrums. We're supposed to run our race, just like when I explained about elbow to the wrist. Look after your thing. Do you run your race? Don't be leaning over the fence telling that fella what to do. He doesn't supposed to lean his shoulder over and tell the women what to do. He's supposed to run your race and trust your brother, trust your sister. So that works on a global scale. And from a painting that I've done, when I put my hand over one colour, I said, so if we even wipe out one of the colours, if the white light became the rainbow, our people put the rainbow back together by understanding every aspect, historically, ecologically, ethically, morally, and spiritually. When you looked at every animal and you could explain what it stood for, what the aspects of that anatomical animal shows us ethically, morally, and eventually spiritually, you could place that in the middle, and then you would expand to the relationships it has with the other 20 things. Then put a circle around those 20 things, put 20 spikes coming out of those things, name those things ethically, morally, historically, physically, spiritually. They recreated the roadmap. They put the jigsaw puzzle back together and it became like a sheet of glass. The white light is the rainbow. The jigsaw down here is the creator. And what we did is when we put it back together, we could look back. When you put the rainbow back together again, it becomes the white light. It always was. But our culture actually spent the 200,000 years not building the Acropolis or the pyramids. It spent 200,000 years putting the rainbow back together again. And what we learned from that is if you take away one of those colours, if you leave one of your brothers or sisters behind, no one's going back. You can't go back with 6. We all go back or none of us go back. And so the trick of creation is you can choose to reach back and take your brother. But the trick is no one gets to go back if you don't. So you can use your 2 choices in life. But in the end, no one goes home unless we take everybody home. So that story's better than the painting. You can just tell, it should be. Just like things become more dense when they become physical, things are more things have a deeper level of knowing closer to spirit. So spirit is better than the diluted version of story. And the diluted version of a story is just the best way I can paint it. So the painting is better when I tell the story because it's really leading us back to the essence of where it came from. So my story, the way I act physically is always going to be a little less than I know I mentally should, which is always a little bit less than I would be if I was purely in spirit. So it's a flow back and forth. Spirit becomes that mental side, that story, and becomes the physical. But how we find spirit in this world is we look at the physical, and from looking at the aspects of the physical, it'll teach us the story, the ethics, the morals, the values, which will lead us back to the spirit. One's created one way, but you read it back the other way.
Interesting. Would you be able to maybe share a bit like of advice for a lot of people out there that are listening that find themselves on maybe the blue guy's land where they're not from? Maybe they're from the yellow land or the orange land. And you talk about like not interfering. But in this day and age, we find that we've got cultures that are mixed up all around the world. What's, like a teaching, an ancestral teaching about that, or from your viewpoint, how we can come together and ensure that we're all going back together, as you say?
Yeah. So even though we talk about it as being blue, green, orange, red, yellow and stuff like that, in a physical sense, and when we draw it, that's why the story is not as good when it's drawn or painted, because we go, oh, so the blue guy should be in the blue corner. That sounds like segregation. But it's really about knowing kind of like your spiritual DNA, which is all, again, white light. But when we broke up, it's cool for a man to say, I'm acting as a man in old culture. Modern culture could decide to mess it up or do whatever the hell they want with that. A woman can say, I choose to act like a woman like this. But there was traits of masculinity that were found more strongly in men. There was traits of femininity that were found stronger in women. There are traits of being a Celt that was slightly different to being a traits of a Germanic. There was traits, that's what made them different. That's why we even there was language, which is a physicality. There was the way they dressed, physicality. But before that, there was a story of what created that physicality. And the essence is all the same, but it's actually Creator showing himself in different ways, in infinite different ways. So when we come back to the current way it is now we've got white fellas, we've got Chinese fellas, we've got everybody here. Now don't think of it so much in the context of, okay, well, I am off country and da-da-da. There should always be, once upon a time there was a line where you didn't cross over. Okay, that line's been crossed. Now what do? We go back. If we can't change the physical, let's go back one step back to the story level. So what would be, if you may not be able to stop being on somebody's land physically, but now how do you show a respectful barrier in a mental world? What would that look like? How do you walk lightly, mentally or emotionally or ethically and morally on that country? Because you're physically here, you can't do anything about that. So what the next thing would be, let's take it back to the story level. So what could we do? I might be humble, which would be a good trait for anybody to be, whether you're from that country or not. Humble's a good thing. Humble means maybe I don't actually know what to do here, so I won't be boisterous and tell everybody else what to think. Well, that's a good trait amongst humanity anyhow, so that's never going to be a bad thing. Maybe search out and say, well, if you ever went to a foreign land, whether it's in your head or in physically, how would I best survive here? How do I become native in some ways, in my head? So, like you with all your work that you do and stuff, and, people burn sage and stuff. And those things are good things because they're done with respect. And I often say to people, well, as Australians here, maybe over time we could start to go, okay, well, what would I burn here? And we might say, so, like America's tobacco. Okay, so the intent is respectful. But one thing I've just tried to say to people recently is, with a little example would be, so what would I burn here? Oh, well, ask the person on that country, what would be the best? Would you mind if I did it out of respect, not because I'm trying to run a ceremony that involves not you? Every morning when I got up, I'd like to acknowledge those whole people. what would you suggest or would you think would be okay for me to do? Because what I think is each plant has a vibration and was created in the country of its birth. So if I burn tobacco in one country or I burn something in another country or somebody else on the opposite side of the world, within the vibration of that plant is a language. Now, if I burn sage or tobacco here with intent, it's good. But what would be better is if you spoke the language of the land that knows that plant. So if I went to Japan and go, I'm trying to be respectful to you here, and I started speaking Gamilaroi, or I spoke English, people might get the intent is I'm trying to be, by the nature of the way I do it, that he's trying to get across a message to us and he's trying to be very humble and caring, but I don't know what he's saying. And if that smoke or that offering or whatever it is, even if it's going to an area and throwing some sand or putting your hands through water, whatever the place is, it's trying to reconnect back. So your intent is the first thing. The intent is everything behind it. But the physicalness, there's actually a physical identity that comes with that, and that can be different even across Australia because it's so vast. So the best thing is you go and maybe ask somebody. Lots of people don't know, even within our own country. There's so much not knowing. It's not the fault of people, like one of my other elders, Uncle Paddy Jerome, Warra Jerome, said to me from Waka Waka Nation, like my other second dad after I've had lots of these beautiful elders, Uncle Paddy Jerome, Uncle Vincent Serico, Uncle Tommy Rose, and then my elder that's the last of the living ones now, so it's Uncle Paulie Spirim. They've all given me such good advice about things, and I lost my little train of thought there, I was going to say.
Talking about like the burning of plants or tobacco. Or...
Yeah, so Uncle Paddy said, I was just trying to glance back to what he was going to say, what he said, but anyhow, yeah, I'll see if it comes back to me. But I think speaking a little bit, that's right, he used to say to me, he said, you remember us the way we used to be, so it'll always be harder to see what has happened to us, but always remember this is what's happened to us, it's not who we were. So he said, always feel the empathy that I know you'd feel for them, because so many people over multiple generations have had children removed, and then those children were removed, and 500 kilometres they were sent away, and then they'd find those and send them another 200 kilometres away. And it was like what I imagine when people say, how come Aboriginal people can't get over things? I said, if I took your hand and I purposely dislocated every knuckle in each finger, and your hand, as I'm visually showing to you now, looked like this, right? That's one form of agony. But if somebody comes up to you and goes, let me just help you, do you think you just offer that hand to anybody while it's in that kind of agony state? You tend to reef it away. And people, why don't you get over it? I'm trying to help you, you stupid people, you know. One thing to go through the agony, two, not to know how to fix it yourself, or three, if you have any trust that somebody's not going to find another way of dislocating something else. So even within our own people, there's a lot of not knowing, a lot of not even understanding most of what I would just say. And I've been fortunate, I've had beautiful old elders, and I have a connection with my old people, and I have a very heavy, strong connection with my feelings that I've been here more than not in other forms, so that I have a knowing of things that I don't have knowledge of. And it's the hardest thing to do sometimes is find elders that also have that old knowing without it having been, so to try to put the meat on the bones. And I've been fortunate to have multiple elders that have helped me along with that. But yeah, so we're in a situation in regards to what you're saying about the colours, how do we walk on this land? I'm just saying, in all that saying that I just said then, don't think you can walk up to any one of our blackfellas and go, so what do I do here now? Understand, most of our people don't know. They have little bits of understanding passed down here and there. That's not putting down our people. It's saying, please understand the reason. When I've heard people say to somebody one time at a cultural do not far from here, said to somebody, oh, can you get up and speak, just tell us the words for these places and these places. And one person I care for said, oh, okay, and he started rattling off names and what they meant. And then when he got to 3 or 4, he didn't know. She was like a little bit of a pompous white lady. She's kind of go, oh, you don't know that one. Oh, okay, let's move on. A little chuckle. And I'm sitting there infuriated while this good man continues to speak very good and plainly. And he went through and she goes, oh, there's another one you don't know. Huh? And all I could feel volcano like coming through me is, you shouldn't be asking why doesn't he know. You should be asking yourself, why do you not know why he doesn't know? Yeah, that it was an ignorance almost based in an arrogance. Ignorance is fine. As Uncle Paulie Spirim says, you only know what you know until you know better, which is a beautiful out. But once you have some inkling into that knowing, then you have to start using your nous to work out things like that. If she wasn't being so arrogant in almost like, oh, you don't know, she should know why he doesn't know. And if she doesn't spend more time looking into your own history than slightly mockingly looking at somebody else's. Same thing about the splinter in your brother's eye instead of the log in your own. In regards to us all being on country now, I think if we start off with the pretense that, yes, let's be humble, let's drop the arrogance, because that more shows yourself as being a frilly lizard, okay? And why I say something like that is every animal teaches you about ethics, morals and values because they carry an aspect of the creator within them. What does the frilly lizard do? Flicks up his big frills and goes, I'm a big fella, look at me, I'm a big fella. Mm-hmm. But I'm only doing the big fella thing because I know I'm not a big fella. It's an act. I'm putting up a facade. So arrogance is often a hidden thing of not ignorance, it's hidden insecurities. Because I don't know. If I put up a big enough show, then you'll think I do know. And arrogance often, you don't know. Well, you're more exposing yourself for the free lizard that you are. So I think that the thing that's good from this is there's a lot of people hurt here. And I have to acknowledge that. I've got a lot of our people that are more harmed than I am. So there's brokenness here. That's what happens when you destroy, when you go out of your way to absolutely disintegrate a culture in every form. Our men, as Uncle Paddy told me, he said, alcoholism isn't something that, he was an alcoholic when he was younger. He got over all that. And he said to me, white fellas didn't turn up and we just pick up a drink and go, glug, 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 oh, that's great, I'm now just off my face. And he said a lot better than that, but I'm giving you a simple example. You have to take warriors that have survived 3,000 generations, each one learnt from every other man there and became a slightly better version of the whole lot of them. And then he would pass that on and pass it on and pass it. It was a proper spiritual evolution and physical, and their knowledge, whatever the first, 150,000 years of knowing learnt, they'd pass it all on to me. And then what I did was I added another 30 years to that or 50 years to that, and then I'd pass that on. So it was true evolutionary knowing. So our greatest culture should probably have been this greatest generation probably would have been the last before the wiping out. And you don't cut down a 200,000-year-old tree and then plant a sapling and go, oh, look, it's the same thing, we didn't lose anything. You did. It's going to take 200,000 years before we can sit underneath that tree again. And that's the sad loss of something like that. In regards to the way that we are now, that brokenness was done on purpose. If you took a man, that same warrior, and he came back to see his raped wife and his beheaded children and his land being cut down and fences around the rivers and fences around his country. Everything that made him a man was, I'm a provider, a protector, I'm a songman, I'm a lawman, I provide and I protect. I'm here as a conduit to protect and look after, speak up for and act on behalf of all living things. My guardianship with the Creator is that he asked me to mind over this, my area, elbow to wrist. On a minor scale, I'm supposed to look after my wife and kids and children. As a man, as a Jedi who stood there with his lightsaber when the stormtroopers came and shot everything in sight, and he couldn't protect those children from being dragged away and taken to missions, and he couldn't stop his wife being raped every time he went to go hunt for them. He disintegrated as the man, as the warrior he was. Everything that he was supposed to be was falling apart, and he couldn't do anything about it. And every time he lashed out, they'd come back and they'd kill everybody in the tribe. And I don't think anybody, unless you're in that position, would know what hell that would be to be in a position of, I suppose, to protect these people, but I have no idea how to these people, what monsters do behead children, what monsters do this. And it was a world that they didn't know, and they didn't know how to respond to that. And as I wrote in one of the things, because I write, I said, the ugly smashed the beautiful. Those with vision were struck down by those with no sight. Now, that's not a wipe at every white person, talking about right at that moment. Guess what? The Celts were taken out by the Britons were taken out by the Romans, but that doesn't take away from the fact that you don't just say, well, everybody's been taken out by somebody. That's not the point. If you're going to say that line, well, everybody's been taken out, make sure you remember what it feels like before you say that. Because if you say that with no feeling, you've used it as an excuse to abuse the next person. But if you said it like, I remember a million Catholic Irishmen starved at the hands of the English. I know my great-grandfather came out here because of that. That's a horrible, horrible thing to watch Irish starve like they were living in Saharan Africa. To imagine my ancestors starving like that, just like it would be for any Africans or anybody else to starve. That history, if that stayed with you, then you're okay to say, I'm sorry, my brother, that must have been awful to see your people being slaughtered like that. And for that reason, what can I do to help you? And the moment that somebody acknowledges your pain, it creates a bond. And that bond, just like the bonds, the very breakages that your ancestors may or may not have done, but that, so if we were like myself, Celtic and Germanic backgrounds, well, guess what? There's 80% of me has a responsibility to be the best man I can to make up for whatever Germanic, Celtic, English backgrounds did something. And I can say, well, I didn't do it, but wouldn't I be a better man for going, but I'll stand up and do something. I didn't do wrong, but I will be the man that chooses to do right. And I'll have as we spoke about before, I'll be able to say at the end of time, my ancestors would have been proud because they can't be forgiven for things that they did in the past because they can't say sorry and they can't fix it. But they did help. Maybe the greatest thing they ever did, whether they were good guys or bad guys, I would like to have the story in my head that my ancestors hoped that there'd be somebody like me because I'm the only way they can be forgiven. So this story is really important. Whether you're black, white, Chinese, doesn't matter. If you've got a powerful story changes, comes out of your mouth and out of your hands. So at the moment that I have the story, and people go, oh, stories aren't real. Stories are realer than the physical. We just don't come from cultures that believe that. You can't have anything physical without a real story. If I can say to myself, I know I have ancestors. I believe and know them to be in spirit. I know that those people wished for a better people that came from them. If I'm the best thing that they ever made, I'm also the thing that could have them forgiven. And instead of my lineage being the one that were rapers and pillagers, they also created a man that was someone who was able to heal the very things he didn't make wrong. And suddenly my lineage goes from rapers and pillagers to people that fix things that didn't do wrong. And my lineage from now on would be able to look back and go, I come from that man. And suddenly those kids grow up with stories, non-Indigenous, Asian, black, whatever. They come up with stories where they go, yeah, I come from that line. So now the weight where I might have had the negative make me go, I might choose to do greater than them. Now these kids that come after me will go, I come from that lineage. Well, don't you let that down then. Don't you let him down. God, he'd be embarrassed to think I've spoken to kids like this. God, you come from a great people. Don't you let them down. And that weight doesn't cripple a kid. What it does is it gives them, as I say, Malmaninga legs, thick and big, thick, strong legs, because the weight makes you want to be better than you would have been without that weight. So concepts of ancestors aren't Aboriginal, they're human. Concepts of spirituality, connection to country, these aren't terms, they're belief structures about something that leads you back, as elements that lead you back to spirit. So as non-Indigenous people, I think the best way to describe it would be to say, know that you come from great and bad and broken people equally, or not, doesn't matter. If you come from broken, bad people, that you think there would have been great people there in them, that's why you're good. and try to do the best you can with the time you've been given, and know that those people were in most cases raped, pillaged, they were slaves, and they were broken. And you might be a less broken version of your people, and do the best you can with the time you've been given so you can be a mentor, or you can be something that your great-great-great-grandchildren will look back and go, damn, you come from that way? Yeah, that's why I stand up tall. I just think, I think it's not about getting past it, getting over it. It's working through it, but you apologising. Like if I ran over somebody's cat, I say sorry because I did it. If I see somebody's cat get run over and I saw a woman crying, I'll walk up and go, oh God, I'm sorry. Not because I did it. I just feel human empathy and go, my God, that's a horrible thing to happen. If we could get past the fact that sorry means you did it, rather than sorry just because you're a human being and that shit shouldn't have happened, man. And I mean, I can't remember 500 years ago when it happened to my people, but I reckon they looked as devastated as you are. But I come from good people, so what can I do to help you out? And at the moment somebody hears that you hear their pain, that's the first forgiveness, the first healing, sorry. Because if I go, I'm so sorry you lost your kid, that's better than no one saying it. It's even better than somebody going, I don't reckon you really lost your kid. That's like getting raped over again. It's like, denial of the stolen generation was like, no, we didn't. Mm-hmm. Bloody well did. I was one. I was this, I was that, or whatever. But if you can say, not only, well, we won't talk about it, that doesn't help. But if you walk up and go, that'd be a shitty thing to happen, man. I'm so sorry. No one should have had that happen to you. What can we do? And the longer we stand here on this land, your roots go down, whether you're one generation or 10 or 3,000, your roots go down deeper. You feel things at a deeper level. So no, a sixth generation Australian will not feel the same level of spirituality and depth that a 3,000 generation, because the DNA knows that one better. Mm. But you can be the greatest sixth generation Australian there is. And who knows, if you spend enough time here, when you go into somebody's country, sometimes they say pick up a bit of soil and rub it on your skin, smell like it. And the country identifies. That's why I say when you're smoking things and stuff, use something the country knows. And the more you smell like it and move like it and act like it, well, look at it's two perfect examples. I'll just finish on this with this point. Two things that invaded this country in animals. This takes it away from people. We had a cane toad, invited into the country, came here, rapes, pillages, outbreeds, nothing. The concept of a pest is something that is not a pestilence, is something that comes not from the place of origin, from here. It comes into the place, it outbreeds, outcompetes, and may well poison or kill off the other one, the native. So cane toad moves across the country, and funny enough, the front line of that group of cane toads is like ginormous. Actually, genetically, it grows 3 times bigger than the ones behind it. It's almost like a frontierman who moves across anything that touches it, from crocodiles to snakes to eagles to goannas. Anything eats it, kills it. But as soon as they've moved through, they keep moving on and generating the big giant ones at the front. But the next ones that move through get back to about half the size, down to a third the size. That thing came here, kills everything in sight. Doesn't seem to fit in with anything, just kills and destruction. We could look at that as being part of maybe an Australian history. On the same instance, a dingo came into Australia, not a native. It kind of maybe competed with the thylacine and pushed it out maybe, but over 5 or 10,000 years, however long it's been here, the thing didn't go rabid, didn't raise into groups of hundreds of thousands, sweep across, eat everything living and dead. It didn't. Funny enough, it ended up being incorporated with the Aborigines, who used to use thylacines, and then came in. Probably got some, I don't know, because I don't know about this stuff. I don't know what I don't know, and I don't claim to. I'm sure it'll have some sort of dreaming origin story, because to be here physically, our people would look at the stars, and if you can't see how it has connection to the stars, then it doesn't exist. You could be patting the thing and you say, well, it's not real, but they go, well, how is it not real? Because if I can't see it in the stars, as this white light becomes the rainbow, everything in the stars, this is a projection of that, where we all came from, in a very, very real way. So when we look at the dingo, it ended up learning away. It first of all may have caused a bit of upheaval and pushed out some things. That could be the story of Australia. But after it got in here, it eats certain things and it keeps down other things. And even when the ruddy rabbits come in, it keeps them down. It actually does serve it, but it's ended up fitted in. While not starting off the right way, maybe, it's actually joined with Indigenous people. It has a certain type of job it does, and it fits with it. It doesn't wipe out everything else. So there's two stories that could be the Australian story. And like what you were just saying, what about Indigenous people that come onto country? They're the blue people, but they're on green country. How do they work? Well, you can still be blue man because it's an aspect of light, ethics, morals, values. You can still be a Celt on country, but living with the ethics, morals and values of the green man, which is really the ethics, morals and values of a blue man anyhow. Good men, good women are pretty much the same everywhere. You don't get up and just do straight up dances because, well, I'm on this country so I can do those dances. You can't snatch at spirit any more than you can snatch at water. If you're holding water and you go, oh, well, I want some of that because I'm Australian too, so snatch at it, what happens? It goes right through your fingers. You normally knock it out of the hand of the person who had it, and then you can't catch it yourself either. Spirit's not something you can grab. If a person's holding that spirit, that ancientness, the smart thing is not to snatch at it because you lose it. The smart thing is if you want to hold it, you put your hands together like the person, you mimic the person that holds it, and you put your hands out and you said, in a humble way, may I hold some of that water? And they pour it into your hands. You end up holding it the same way as they do. You could be a blue man and he could be a green man, but you hold it the same way. And in the way you hold it, looks humble, looks respectful of the very thing you're trying to hold. There's no other way. You can't hold it upside down. You can't hold it really tightly. So as far as I'm concerned, that we've still got to be who we are, but we're more similar than we are different. And I don't think it's impossible to live the life of a Germanic or a Celtic person that over the years maybe we'll just all meld together because to a large degree you will be affected just like how people grew big or grew small, grew giant, thick shoulders like Greg Inglis and Hodges, living in Manly along the coastline. Our shape is changed by the story of the land which comes from the spirit. I don't doubt that every Australian that takes on humility, empathy, respect, deep values, and the desire to want to be a part of this, just like that dingo. If you can stand here long enough in the footprint that you'll make, your kids will be a little bit more of that than you will be, and go on and on and on. But in this lifetime, who's to say? You know what? I mean, we didn't. I'm sure we didn't build a culture in one generation. Mm-hmm. And if there's enough of our people that are whole enough and less broken, and that's a huge task. You think of Australian Aborigines. There's never been bombs set off. We didn't do an IRA on the white Australia. People might go, there's anger there, and you'll see marches, but no one's gone around killing each other. That wasn't part of it. Even in our people that are broken, there's not this desire to want to absolute hate and harm. And even that's a huge task. If white Australia had lost their country after only holding it for about 150 years, if they'd lost it to the Japanese, and I tell this story when I'm telling stories, but I won't go into it all now, but if you would know more, could do your rugby league or your AFL, and you lost the meat pies, which are overseas stuff, and all the sports from overseas pretty much, but all the things that we cherish as modern day Australia, marching on the beach, surf lifesaving, saying "G'day, mate," like it's a language, but it's not. It's just an Anglo version of, a slang version. As I say, "G'day, mate," is just "good day, sir," slightly changed. But we identify it as a very Australian thing. Okay, well, it has slight connotations of something from here. But if in 150 years, whatever minuscule identity we'd built up as being this new Australian, if it had been wiped out in the first 150 years, I said, just as an analogy for feeling what it's like, some people get disappointed when they hear, oh, Aboriginals won't sing the anthem. Okay, let's just take that let's look at it broader. So you lost your wife, you lost your kids, you lost your country, you lost your sacredness, you lost your religion, you lost your dreaming, you watched your kids become drug addicts and alcoholics, not because they loved it, but they were so disillusioned with a culture that wouldn't absorb them or allow them to be even on their own country. it's shattering this generation after generation with the purpose of completely obliterating all that was. Imagine if as a very slightest example would be instead of holding a culture for 200,000 years and having it ripped out, and you know how deep down you go over 200,000 years. After 150 years, if the Japanese had taken Australia and you no longer, you see your grandchildren who have now got Japanese bloodlines in them somewhere down the line because of rapes and pillages that have happened, your grandchildren, you now live in the park because you can't get a job because you're one of them white walkers, those weird, big blue-eyed looking things that are subhuman, right? Imagine you live in the park, the long grass, as they talk about you live on the fringe. You can't get a job. You don't know that other strange language. Well, guess what? You just talk gibberish now. To the people that own the country, you just speak that old gibberish language. You get struck in the street for speaking that, like our people were. And then what happens is your grandkids, you see them walking to school and you're in the park and you call out, "Hey, g'day, mate." And you see his head drop and just turn away a little bit. And the other kids that are full Japanese go, "Do you know him?" in Japanese. And you go, and he says, "No," but you hear it. And you sit there and realise all the things that you used to, in that 150 years hold treasure, you used to think, "I loved it when we walked all and we were proud and we were Anzacs and we did this and we did that and we used to play sport and we thought we had a connection with the country and we were farmers and we surfed and we did all these really Australian things." And then I said to him, imagine in that instance whereby in that circumstance you'd find that as your kids, you thought, "Oh, my grandson's going to get a medallion today at school." So you turned up to get the medallion, and then while getting the medallion, he's getting it. And they said, "Okay, before the medallion," they're speaking in Japanese, "we're all going to stand and play the anthem." And this is not me mocking, this is the best. The tune wouldn't be Advance Australia Fair. It might be a traditional sounding, which I can't do well, so it's not a mocking, it's just dong, 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 that kind of tune, right? You're supposed to stand and put your hand on your heart. These are the people that slaughtered your family. These are the people that took your land, not let you live your religion. You weren't allowed to do your sporting events. Your very children are ashamed of you. You can stand up and feel like a coward, put your hand on your heart, or you could sit and not yell and not scream and just go, "I choose not to stand up. I don't choose to take a part of it. For all the ancestors, I won't stand here and do that." So when people get angry because certain Indigenous players don't take a knee, they don't do anything other than not sing. When you put it like that, as a human, is it that hard to understand that he's not even stopping you singing your song? He's just choosing not to sing it. That's how I try to teach. Can you not understand as a human that person probably has the right to? And if I had any empathy in my heart, I could simply go, "Understand why, brother."
That word is really beautiful and powerful. And I think it's a lot more than, say, what you see nowadays where there's just an acknowledgement of country and that's it. And it's forgotten about. And I think that word that you just shared can potentially help people to really kind of take a moment to think about where they live and whose land it is and how they can integrate that. And, we can all kind of come together, and heal in that way. So I'd like to, the next question, and I think maybe we can kind of close this circle that we've opened and bring everything kind of back in. But maybe there's a way or a word that you can share with people out there for the youth of today and how they can maybe connect to themselves in a better way and connect to like these elders. There's a lot of, we were talking before about coaching. I was saying like everyone's into coaching now because, a lot of people didn't or don't have elders to go and talk to. So they've got to find a coach to tell them that they're good or, they don't have those olden ways. So if there's some knowledge or word you could share on that, that'd be a really good way to close this meeting we've had together.
Yeah, thanks, brother. Yeah, okay, so I think that a couple of things there. I think that first of all, with my teaching, the way I paint, the way I talk, so I've been teaching for 30 years from prep to university, lecturing, and and then doing the art for 30 years. And so I'm 55 now. And I've always tried to pass this stuff on, knowing that there'd be a time where I'm one link in the chain as to helping create the best group that we need to. This time we're living in was almost preordained by our people. I've heard stories talk about this time that he said, one of the elders from Murray, Uncle Roy Barker, said to me, it was stated that there will, in the future, there'll be a time when when we send back our greatest, those oldest and strongest ones. He said they will come back in a time when it was most needed, because they will be required to come back in this time. And he said, and I don't doubt that many of them will come back as Mulcahy's my boy, which is light-skinned Aboriginal. And he said, it'll be because they're needed at that time. So I've taught, knowing that part of my responsibility is to make sure that, it doesn't matter if you're one of them or that you're trying to bring in those people, but those kids need to hear those words. Now, yes, Indigenous kids need to know more about Indigenous culture than anybody else. The Greeks need to know more about the Greek kids need to know more about their Greek culture than the French kids need to know about it, than the Greek culture. But in turn, while they need to know that, what I'm trying to do is stop people in schools and other places going, well, we've only got 5 Indigenous kids here, so we really won't need you. And I go, so you got any Australian kids at your school? If we're going to break this down, we've got to stop those kind of things. Yes, Indigenous kids, give me Indigenous time purely with those kids. But when it comes to the Australian kids, when we say Australian, we're saying white Australian, Greek, French, Japanese, whatever, they share this land. I want them to get a sense of what it is to be bigger Australians, to broaden out the sense of that identity. The bigger and stronger identity, it will dissolve all the problems that we think are problems. Okay, Australia thinks we've got domestic abuse problems, not a problem. We think we've got drug problems, not a problem. We think we've got racism, sexism. We've got mental issues, not a problem. They are symptoms of a problem. The problem with Western society and probably is that they've forgotten what is real and what is symptomatic. Symptoms are there to alert you that there's a problem. The sneeze won't kill you, but the sneeze tells you there's something going on. If you and me are having a big chicken sandwich and we're munching it down and with a quart of milk to go down there, and you shove massive burger down your throat in 3 seconds, and then you got that, oh my God, I can feel it stuck in me, in your sternum, can't swallow the damn thing, all right? That's one problem. But if I'm shoving it down as quick and I swallow the chicken bone and I'm just heaving up but I can't get rid of it, I'm choking my guts out. But Western medicine would say, I got that fixed, brother. Here's a Codral. That'll fix that cough. You don't supposed to, you trying to fix my cough won't mean that the chicken bone's not stuck in my throat, but somehow you're going to try to alleviate the symptom. And what we don't realise is that all those things we call problems are symptoms. They were supposed to, again, lead you back, just like the physical leads you back to the story. The physical symptoms lead you back to the story of the problem that we have. Racism, bullying and sexism will be destroyed, along with all those other things, at the point in which we get a greater understanding of our identity. Now, identity's got a weird word at the moment. It can mean everything and anything. But if I was to say identity, I would say find out from whom you come, from where you come, what they believed in, what you'd live and what you'd die for. Well, who are the people that you most admire, mentors? That would just be a sprinkling of finding out what you should do. If you bring up kids knowing those things, knowing what they would live and die for, who they came from, what the history of those people were, what the history of that land was, the tales and the proud moments that they will carry on their shoulders when they go out into the world. This destroys mental health, depression, anxiety. You've got a passion, you've got direction, you're driven, you feel joy, you feel compassion for those that are broken. Everything that we see as problems is completely turned on its head when you add to people's identity. Now, currently, non-Indigenous Australians have 250 years-ish history. They're not Poms, they're not Yanks, but they're also not Asian, they're not African. This is, white Australia. They don't know really who they are. They think they've got meat pies and Holland cars, which have both come from somewhere else, right? That makes you feel less than, because I'm not quite as amazing as the English. I'm not quite as out there as the Americans. I don't have a deep and abiding culture like the Indians. So you seem to be it leaves you with a feeling of a facade culture, a put together thing that's just new. What if I could stand up in front of those same kids and talk about what it is to be an Australian? When the Greeks talk about the stories of Alexander, when somebody else talks, the French talk about the Charlemagne, when the English talk about William the Conqueror, and you're over in Europe and you're sitting there and everybody's talking about that, and then you say, and I said this to class, when you go over there and you say, could I tell a story? This happened to me. When I was in Ireland, German guy goes, what are you? No, you are nothing. You are just Australian. You are convict. Ha, ha, ha. Which I just wanted to give him the sandwich that I had in my hand.
With a chicken bone.
With a chicken bone in it. Yeah, I was going to give him the history lesson, seeing he was so good at history, but that breaking the more broken doesn't help. So we alleviated the problem, and I went on to talk, and I said, I'd like to tell you a story, and I know the Greeks, and I didn't say it in a negative way. I said, I just want to tell you an ancient story. I know the Greeks are 3,000. I know Charlemagne is 1,200 years old. I know William the Conqueror is 1,000 years old. I'd love to tell you a story that may be going back 100 to 200 plus thousand years, that our people have carried about what it is to be a great man. And I talked the story of the Emu, and I told he had two choices in life, and a redemption, and a story of one who was a bully and was small-hearted but big-bodied, and the loss of his wings made him have two choices, like the emu feathers that hang from his body. And he said, I could have been everybody's guardian, but I was everybody's nightmare. Now I choose to be the very guardian that I should have been when I had a bigger body. So now I choose to have the bigger heart, the bigger soul, and the slightly smaller body. And he didn't pick on the Brolgas anymore. He acknowledged the beautiful dance that they do and the fact that it stands for dedication, beauty of your body, mind and spirit. He didn't attack the kookaburras, who are the awakeners, the ones that remind us to share a gift with somebody before they even share something with you. He picked one woman to be his partner for the whole of their life, and he loved and looked after the kids. He asked his woman, would she lay the eggs because he wants to sit on them. He sat on them. He nurtured them. He hardly eats or drinks the whole time he sits on them for the weeks. When they start to hatch, he peels the shell off because he's a big sooky dad. But he's also the guardian and the protector and a provider. So if anything comes near them, the little babies drop like sock puppets, and he runs in the direction to pull the enemy away. He will defend his woman. He can disembowel you if he needs to. He loves being a dad so much that after the babies all eventually leave him at full size, they want to still hang around with dad. They follow dad alone because dad was the greatest parent they could be. It taught us as a man, yes, you're strong, you're big, provider, protector. You're also the nurturer, and those kids love you. Be everything to them. And those kids have an example of what then to be. It teaches the women that you don't have to not do anything. It teaches the women, you may not have to do what he does, but your responsibility, just like he had the responsibility to protect, sit on the eggs, do all that, you as a woman, pick a good man. Don't pick the pretty man. Don't pick the big, muscly, chunky thing that struts around, because the man you pick is the father they didn't choose. The responsibility you have to choose to pick the good man, because those kids won't get to choose. Your responsibility, your immaturity will cost your very children that great father. So she has responsibilities. He has responsibilities, different responsibilities. But when together, what happens as soon as those babies leave? He comes over to her and goes, let's do it again. I love being a dad. And I said, when you tell that story and you're midway into telling this story and you've heard it like we did over and over in this Australian culture where you hear it, you start to move it. My dad used to say, you dance when you kind of dance and when you talk. And I said, no, I don't. I stand really still. But I started to embody the movements of what I was telling. When you do it that well, and we become better storytellers than the Irish, right? You telling that story full on. People be walking in the room there, and somebody just, get him another beer. Keep going, mate, keep going. And then another pie comes in. Somebody walks in, what are you doing? Shut up, the Australian's here, shut up. Oh, sorry. What's he doing? Just shut up, listen to what he's got to tell you. And you see these kids smiling, right? These are all non-Indigenous in the class. Big grins. And I said, you promised me I've come in here for 2 days talking to you. None of you black fellas. Any of you on temporary visas? No. So you're Australian. So you're here. The stories you just heard are your stories. If you embody them, no use having a story you don't act on. No use dancing the dance of the emu when you're not a good father and you've got 3 kids to, got 6 kids to 4 different women, but you're not with any of them. Sit down and don't dance that dance. That dance was there to promote what it is to be a good man. Don't put on the suit but not be the businessman. Get down and do the business every day. Don't dance it, but do it every day. That's more important. So these dances, the artwork, the stories, the songs were to embody that. So you had that. I said, so when they say to you, all sitting around, mouth aghast, and you're on your 12th story, and they're all sitting there going, what the hell? How the hell do you know all this? I want you to stand up, look at them all, give them a wink and go, why wouldn't I know this? I'm an Australian. And you see every kid, biggest smile on their face because they felt bigger. And guess what? The bigger you feel, the more responsibility you carry. You say those songs, so you tell the people that gave you that song, that story, that dance, you tell them where it came from. You speak about the elder that told you. You tell the country that came from. People are sitting there going, freaking hell. Yeah. And in that bigness of all that humility and that respect you've shown, people think more of you. You'll think more of yourself and you'll try to do it bigger and better. And then when you marry, guess what? You'll know how to pick one woman for your life. You'll know how to love those kids and you'll know how to protect and provide. Everyone on the planet wants that. And the women have their own songs, stories and artwork to make them a woman worthwhile wanting. Yeah, yeah. So I just suggest that you can't just go, okay, so why don't we just do that? Because there's a lot of people not ready for it. My job for me, and I'm saying that everybody's doing their own thing. We're all little 1/1000th aspect of creator. My job this lifetime is very strongly to raise my own kids with that values, for them to see that in me every day. And while I don't do anything perfectly, I do try to be that man every single day and very rarely drop off those major things. But, wake up, you're narky, you're a bit shitty here or there about some things. But generally I'm that. Generally and pretty specifically, I try to be that man every day. And I question myself every day how I could be a little bit better. And so all the kids that I teach, as I said to you, if they ever saw me selling drugs, hitting my kids, abusing my wife, then they should dismiss everything I say because I'm not the man. I might have said the words, but I'm not that man. They might do a better job of following those words, but they shouldn't listen to anything I say after that. So if you go down that line, and as I said to you, when you're starting a painting, if you're going to screw it up at any stage, screw it up in the first 5 minutes. Don't screw it up 50 hours into it. At the age of 55, I don't want to be doing anything stupid. I've spent 55 years building into the man that I am. I'm not going to risk it with anything stupid. Not that that comes into my mind, but that's when the weight of my past and the weight of my ancestors and the country I come from and the people I come from and the elders I come from, that weight leaves no room for me to want to be less than they were or anything else. So I don't think if it's Indigenous or non-Indigenous, there should come a point in time sooner than later where I like to spread this with all the kids. And I think that in the end, all you do is you'll end up with a group of kids with a huge identity who have direction, passion, purpose, empathy and respect and all those things. It didn't matter in which time period or which culture. To me, my Gamilaroi or our wider Aboriginal culture is not so much just Indigenous or Aboriginal. It's a template for humanity. It's the last light of the original light. When those that wanted to destroy this world went around and put all the lights out, and one by one they extinguished the lights of the Celts and the Germanic and the African and the Indian and the Chinese and the American Indians or whatever, when they were putting the lights out, we hold here the last embers of the original light. If this was to go out, then humanity's lost itself. And while most of the rest of the world looks like it has lost itself, the very ones, as I used to say to Indigenous kids sometimes, in a very proper way when they were 40 years ago, I said, there'll be a time, 40 years ago I said this to them, when people will eventually come to you and say, what do we do now? And your responsibility from the beautiful race you come from, separate to your own angers or feelings of what you've lost, your responsibility as an ancient people is to save the very people that destroyed us, because that's what a big brother would do. A big brother will take the slings and arrows, the punches and the slaps of the younger one, who in losing itself or immaturity will lash out. Your responsibility as an Australian, as an Indigenous person or whatever now, but this is what I said to them back then, will be to do everything you can to call on those ways of we were. You'll know what to do when the time comes. But I'd extend that out now to non-Indigenous kids if we could get enough time to do that work with them. And not everybody teaches this way, and not everybody knows that, but everybody's got their own way, I'm sure. So if we could do this, the very thing that is struggling in schools is identity issues. And we're not telling people what they have to be, but you certainly give them strong aspects of what you can be as a human being, ethics, morals, values. And overnight you'll find racism, bullying, sexism, mental illness, and all other forms of self-abuse and external abuse go. And suddenly you find kids with passion, direction and drive, wanting to do something with this world. And as one group of kids said to me, well, actually, after I'd done a 2-hour thing with them, they did a little report from some of the kids at one of the schools, basically said they got this report back, and comments from the kids were, we have to do something with the time we've been given. It's no use just sucking air. I didn't know I had a responsibility until Uncle told me, these are non-Indigenous, that I really have to do something with this life, and that it's really important because the people that come after me will benefit, and I'm getting forgiven the people that came before me. You know, these are kids in grades 7 and 9, and as one of the principals said to me, you had the worst kids in the school today. I said, I didn't know they were the bad kids. And he goes, sometimes it's how you put in front of the kids. Because, that's what changes things. So anyhow, that's it, man. I just think that we need to less worry about the packaging and start getting back to the very thing that made us human. And we're all working with humans, so it's not really a problem. The product's okay. We just got to remind the kids, stop being the droids that they're trying to make you into be, and start remembering the magic of what it is to be Jedi. The saddest thing is when Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny goes, while they might be a false magic, it was the only magic we remember. And when you see the little lights in the eyes of kids go out going, so what is there now? Oh, you can work forever. You get 4 weeks holiday, right? And you can buy lots of shit and then produce some more kids to get on the conveyor belt to go along the line and produce another bunch of droids. I said, you got Jedi DNA. You just hasn't been switched on yet. And I said, as my old people, I'll finish on this, as my old people said, we must remember how great we were to ignite the flames of future greatness. So that's why cautiously I talk about some spiritual stuff, because otherwise people think we're the stick people. We threw sticks, blue sticks and dotted with sticks. That doesn't inspire anybody. We were dimensional, travelling, fast-walking Jedi that could portal, and we could do stuff that people think of as fanciful, and we did things that the rest of the humanity hadn't had time to dream up yet. We were living it and experiencing it here because we had so long to do it. And so I'm in awe because as I'll finish, I know that I know 1/100th of 1,000th of 1% of what was. I know a handful of sand on the whole damn beach. That keeps you really, really humble. And when people think you know a lot, you feel really, really embarrassed because you know how much you don't know. But it makes me feel really proud to know that if I came back here next 10,000 lifetimes, about then I'd go, I'm getting this. I'm starting to get this.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
No worries, bros.
All right, that was very inspiring and humble at the same time. And I think it's, for me, even me personally, you've given me a lot of knowledge and wisdom to go away with and to look at with my own family, and I'm sure everyone listening the same thing. So I say thank you for inviting me in here to your home. You're having me here this afternoon and wanting to be on the podcast and share a bit and give back to the younger generation. So thank you very much.
It's not strange to you, bro, because we're all human.
That's it.
We just got to remember who we were.
Exactly. Thank you.
No worries, my brother.
Oh.